Good morning. Welcome to Money in the Morning, a live recording session of Money in the Morning. For those of you new to the show, I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, and this is our basement that is partly packed in boxes because we are moving. I love moving. And by saying I love moving, I don't love moving at all. I take that back. I actually kind of do. We moved a lot when I was a kid. And so we moved fairly often. And so I'm pretty used to moving. And I do get this kind of perverse love of moving. And I have to just get this stuff ready to go here. And we are then ready to roll on today. All right. Oh. Okay, we got those. Get rid of that. Move this into here. I only have like 70,000 windows open as we're prepping today. We just got done with some great other recording sessions. Recorded an episode with OG earlier. And then we also recorded a episode we recorded come on, Joe. We recorded a featured interview with Fritz Gilbert from the Retirement Manifesto, and it was a fantastic discussion that Fritz and I had. He just recently retired, and we went through the thought process. And if you know anything about Fritz, you know that he didn't go in blindly. Like he thought about a lot of stuff, which is exactly why I wanted to talk to him. So good guy to talk to. All right. Hey, Sophia. They are packed in boxes because the basement is moving. Oh, Kimberly, how are you? No, today's actually the mug that Lori got me. I don't know if Lori's here today, but sometimes she's here with us. Lori works at the school that I went to, and she sent me stuff from the Citadel. So today is the Citadel. Very exciting. Love it. She got me some cool Citadel socks too, which are these Citadel colors of these it's light blue. And we had a crazy sock 5K recently, and I wore my Citadel socks running the 5K. And they came up to like almost my knees, these baby blue socks. They were awesome. Not meant for that. Lori might not be happy to hear that I wore the crazy socks in a 5K. But all right, enough about that. Let's get this party started. I need to test. We got some good headlines. And I know I say that every day. But today, we're going to talk first about Vanguard. Oh, and I have to sign in to this particular publication. There it is. And then our second one is about people retiring single. And it's not just for singles. Nope, the basement's, but mom's moving, Sophia. So lots of family stuff going on for us in the Midwest. And so we are headed from Texarkana to Detroit. First move is going to be across town because the house sold way quicker than we thought it was going to. House sold actually in 2 days. I gave it 5 months because this is a mid-century modern house. And in a town as small as Texarkana, you're never sure how long it's going to take. Thank you. You're never sure how long it's going to take for a house to sell. So we gave it 5 months. And in some very clear thinking on our part, we're moving to Michigan in January, which what could go wrong? moving to Michigan in January. All right, let me, let's try this. Yesterday, I had some problems with the volume being all over the place. Like the soundboard was really acting up. Okay, it seems to be good today. All right. Get those. Where are my notes? All right. This is for tomorrow, July 4th. So at the beginning, I'm going to talk about Happy Independence Day. And as always, feel free to comment in the sections. Eric, I don't know, but hopefully Doug's not moving with us. So we'll see. No, that's yeah. Knowing Doug, he'll find a way to make his way to Michigan too. All right, here we go. Check. All right. This is for tomorrow. Happy Independence Day, stackers in the United States, if you're outside the United States. Happy Wednesday. One thing I like to talk about, I think about on a holiday morning is, I realized last night I've been paying for this thing called Hum for a long time for my daughter. I start thinking about responsibility, right? With this particular holiday, I think about what I can do different, what I can do better. I like doing that on my time off, by the way. Around holidays, I always think big picture stuff. But anyway, I've been paying for this thing Hum for my daughter for a long time, and it's hidden on my cell phone bill, so I don't see it. It's a great product, by the way. I bought it, but she doesn't use it. She came clean when I called her and said, you know what, Dad, I'm not using this stuff at all. So even though from an old guy's perspective, Hum is this great support system for a single person when she's out on the road, she has other support systems. She's thought about her support systems. She's thought about exactly what she needs in her life to make sure she gets from point A to point B safely. Dad thinking too ends up being redundant. I'm wasting tons of money on this stuff. How much money are you wasting today? What's your support system like? Let's talk about your support network and your money habits on today's show. Live from my mom's half-finished basement in Texarkana, Texas, it's Money in the Morning. Hey, stackers, I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, Average Joe Money on Twitter. And on today's show, Vanguard gives you much, much more in terms of exchange-traded funds. So if you're a Vanguard customer, you're high-fiving yourself today because the offerings just got a lot better. And in our second headline from CNBC, aging singles. If you're somebody who's single and you're worried about retirement and your support network, we're going to talk about that also on today's show. Great sponsor today, by the way, for a holiday, FAMZoo. You know, if you're somebody who has kids bored to tears today on the 4th of July, guess what? You can teach them about money. And it's easy to teach them about money the modern way at famzoo.com. Use our link, though, stackingbenjamins.com/FAMZoo gets you there. All right. Speaking of getting there, let's get to these headlines, shall we? Laura, get us fired up.
Here come two headlines ripped from the financial press, only at Money in the Morning.
Sometimes they aren't financial press. Yesterday, it was from ESPN, which nobody would call financial press. But today, she ain't lying, because this comes to us from Investment News, which is an industry rag for financial professionals. And Vanguard expands commission-free trading to 1,800 exchange-traded funds. 1,800, ratcheting up the competition for investor dollars. Vanguard said it would offer commission-free online transactions for nearly 1,800 exchange-traded funds, up from the current 77. We do that again. 77 is how many they have now. It's going to go to 1,800. The commission-free exchange-traded funds include most of Vanguard's offerings, as well as ETFs from BlackRock, Schwab, and State Street Global Advisors. Commissions will continue to be charged on inverse and leverage ETFs, Vanguard said in a release. Vanguard said it expects commission-free online transactions to be available in August. It said the program includes the majority of exchange-traded funds traded on major exchanges and, quote, constitutes the largest suite of ETFs available to investors without commissions. ETFs have grown tremendously over the last 10 years as a broader range of investors have increasingly gravitated to low-cost index strategies, according to Vanguard. Financial advisors have increasingly employed ETFs as low-cost diversified building blocks on behalf of their clients. And more recently, retail investors are beginning to adopt ETFs as a preferred investment over actively managed mutual funds and individual securities, the company said. So, let's dive into this, shall we, stackers? Two quick things from the bottom of this article. Financial advisors first jumped on the ETF train, and then retail investors jumped on it afterwards. By the way, a lot of people that I read retail-wise think that advisors don't get it when it comes to exchange-traded funds. Advisors more than get it, they led the way. And I saw that back when I was a financial advisor, that the retail client was way, way, way slower at embracing exchange traded funds, but everybody's on board now, right? But if you're not on board, I think we should take just a second and talk about what exchange traded funds do, what they are. So here's the thing. We're going to start off this story. It's welcome to Uncle Joe's Story Hour, presented by FAMZoo, stackybenjamins.com/FAMZoo. In the beginning, when mutual funds were created, it was a way for a smaller investor like you and I. When I say small, I'm talking, not billions of dollars, right? So even if you're a millionaire, you're a small investor. Isn't that sad? But what big investors knew early on was, listen, the way not to break the bank here is to invest not in one or two or three different things, but to invest in a lot of different stuff. So as long as the whole economy doesn't go under, I'm going to be pretty safe because I invested in a bunch of different things. So mutual funds were created where you'd hire Bill or Jane on the corner to manage a collection of stocks, and a bunch of people threw money in a bucket, right? And Bill or Jane, and by the way, of course, it was nearly Bill, not often Jane, and still, by the way, not often enough Jane, but that's a whole different podcast. But Bill or Jane managed this money in the bucket for everybody, and you put money in, they kept a record, and then you got your portion of the proceeds out. And what Bill or Jane did was took this and put it in a diversified collection of investments. So maybe you own 100 stocks, maybe you own 200 stocks. And when it was time to trade, Bill or Jane would trade. In the 1930s, of course, we went through this horrible Great Depression, and we saw the banking system collapse. We also saw big changes when it came to investing rules, right? So people worrying about a collapse in the system, there were a bunch of safeguards put in place, and then more safeguards have been put in place every single time that we've seen problems in the stock market. And we even saw some that happened just recently with the 2007, 2008 problems in the market. Safeguards have been added to make sure that there's these stops that happen so that cooler heads will prevail. One thing that happens is that if the stock market falls too fast, they will halt trading. And we did see that. We saw that during the 2007, 2008 stop, where in a day, they just stop trading. They wait. Sometimes it's on one issue. Sometimes it's on the whole market. So they'll just make sure people understand what's going on, and it's not just a race to the exit, and then they'll let trading go again. So those people that fear all your money going bye-bye, we would have to have a complete collapse of the system to have all of your money go away in a mutual fund. But what happened over time was, because of all of these regulations and because of the fact that people started comparing these people, these Bills and Janes managing money, to indexes like the Dow Jones Industrial Average or the S&P 500, the 500 biggest companies in America. And they'd say, hey, how's Bill doing versus this person? Bill realized very quickly, that he would lose his job if he didn't compare favorably or at least get close to what that index did. And then because of that trend, and because Bill and Jane were worried about losing their job because they fluctuate too much, and there were plenty of lawsuits that made sure that this happened this way, that Bill and Jane would cling to the index and would get close to this. All of a sudden, somebody got the bright idea and they said, you know what? Bill and Jane don't perform that well. And by the way, there's this popular thing that Bill and Jane don't know what they're doing. There are plenty of money managers that don't know what they're doing. I would assert that the way that people are paid and the way that the system works makes it so Bill and Jane don't rock. That's also why hedge funds came around, by the way, so that people could get away from a lot of this regulation that held them down, these money managers down. There's plenty of money managers that know what they're doing, but the system works in a way that it's hard for them to beat the index. So then we got this rocket science idea. Why don't we just invest in the index? So what an index is, what an exchange traded fund is, it's an index that when you buy the stocks, you don't buy the manager. Now you're just buying the S&P 500, the 500 biggest stocks in America. And you're going to do just a little bit worse than that because they're going to charge you an investment fee, right? There's going to be a little fee. And by the way, because we got rid of Bill and Jane and their whole compensation package, by the way, the funny thing about Bill and Jane here is plenty of Bills and Janes lost their job anyway. Even though the reason they clung to that index was to try to keep their job, they ended up losing their job to the index as people said, hey, you're redundant, right? Time to get rid of you. So back to indexes, though. These indexes charge a little fee. So you're always going to do just a slight bit worse. Well, now with indexes, we have this race to the bottom, which is, hey, there's some indexes that charge these massive fees. And then the fees got smaller. Companies like Vanguard and State Street and BlackRock. The cheapest way to buy the S&P 500, by the way, isn't through Vanguard. It's actually through BlackRock, through ticker symbol IVV, their S&P 500 offering. And that's exchange traded funds. Instant diversification, no manager. You're just buying this collection of stocks or investments now that follow a certain category in the market. Vanguard now gives you 1,800 different ones to choose between. 1,800, just absolutely fantastic. If you can't diversify now, because you know what's going to happen. And by the way, people will say, well, should I move to Vanguard? Maybe that's what you take away from this. But I think the bigger thing to do with this is know that wherever you are in the next few months, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab, E-Trade, Fidelity, they're not going to sit back and let this happen. Vanguard just said, I dare you. And most of these companies are going to take that dare. So I don't know that you have to move your money to Vanguard. I think that as long as you're with one of the major players, you're probably going to have very similar offerings. I believe Schwab had the biggest offering before. That's off the top of my head. So, and if I only had a way to look that up, well, actually I do, but we do these live in front of a Facebook audience and I'm not going to type it out right now. It'd be exciting radio for me to just go type right now. But the big point here is that when it comes to diversification, are you diversified? You know, the recent studies have shown, I think we might have even talked about this on this show before, that the average investor uses either one or two funds. There's this cool thing called the efficient frontier, which is the most efficient use of assets, easier than ever to afford. Just put efficient frontier into your browser and look for the efficient frontier, and you'll find plenty of models that will get you close. Easier than ever to be properly diversified. And the bigger your pie gets, the bigger your investment bucket of money gets, the more important it is to be properly diversified. Early on, you could just do the Vanguard total market index, and I think you're going to be fine. But later on, it ends up being much bigger. Zach here in the in our Facebook chat is telling me that Schwab offers 200 commission-free ETFs from 16 providers. Reduce your trading costs with no trade commissions and no early redemption fees on Schwab. So Zach even giving me the corporate line from Schwab, but 200 of them now. I think we're going to see that number get bigger. But, and also the question to Zach's point, if you've got 100 and it used to be 170 at Vanguard, and you've got 200 of them at Schwab, 1,800. Is that overkill? Like if the average person's using one or two, do you need more than 170? I don't know. It's going to open up to a lot of different people. So good stuff there. Let's say hello to everyone hanging out. Speaking of Zach, thanks for that, by the way, Zach, with us watching live as we record this podcast. Zach said he was quoting from the website. Nice that you got the Schwab corporate line in there, though. That's good. Schwab, if you want to sponsor the show, Joe at stackingbenjamins.com. Edward's with us from Tiller. Hey, Edward. Edward says, funny, was just wondering about fund diversification. Synchronicity. We are on the same wavelength, Edward. We always see that it's smart people at Tiller, and we just kind of follow them. Zizi's here with us today. Hey, Zizi. Amika's here. Amika says, hey, Joe, good morning. Will you help? Will you need help moving Doug too? We can keep him in Cincinnati. That's the cool thing, Amika. Yes, we have tons of boxes in the background as the basement moves north in the next 6 months. Cincinnati's on the route. That would be fantastic. And the fact that, Amika doesn't know my mom's neighbor, Doug, who, by the way, for those of you wondering who the hell that is, he's on our other podcast, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, called Stacking Benjamins. Doug, Amika doesn't know Doug, because Amika, you wouldn't volunteer to keep Doug if you knew Doug. But Eric is here. Do they have Sizzler in Michigan? We're about to find out. Sophia's here. Hey, Sophia. Kimberly's here with us. We got a nice group of people hanging out with us. And if you want to watch these live, scintillating television, by the way, head to facebook.com/iStackBenjamins. That is our Facebook page. And we do these nearly daily there. And Sophia says Doug is special. I think special is in quotes there, Sophia. All right, let's move to our second headline. Try to get back on point here. And this one comes to us from CNBC. This is an interesting topic. And by the way, stay with me if you're not single, because this piece is ostensibly about singles, but I think there's a bigger message here. This is written by Sarah O'Brien over at CNBC. For aging singles, here's how to plan for your golden years. For many older singles, there's something far more pressing on their minds than putting a ring on it: financial security. People with a partner or spouse generally have someone helping out with expenses, as well as a built-in caregiver to lean on. For those who are single and childless, that lack of a default support system poses additional challenges as they age. Quote, it's scarier and lonelier for them, said certified financial planner Christy Sullivan, owner of Sullivan Financial Planning in Denver. When I meet with people without kids or spouses, they're definitely thinking about these things. About 35.4 million Americans lived alone in 2016, comprising 28.1% of all U.S. households, according to the Census Bureau. The share of those age 65 or older is about 19.5 million people. If you're single and wondering whether there are aspects of retirement you should prepare for beyond saving, the answer is yes. The biggest challenge I find for singles with no family nearby is estate planning and care, said CFP Ed Jertson, the second vice president of Mac Investment Securities in Northfield, Illinois. You have to have someone to look out for you financially and medically. Of course, putting as much away as possible in a 401k plan or individual retirement account while you can is important. So is making sure you have emergency savings if you're still working. And it goes through estate planning. And by the way, when you think about estate planning, what Ed is not talking about after you die. I mean, he is a little bit talking about that, but Ed's talking, there's a piece of estate planning that you do that has more to do if you become disabled. If you become disabled, there are documents that you want to have in place that make sure that somebody else can deal with your medical provider on behalf of you if you can't communicate with them, and they give you their wishes. Now, depending on the state, depending on where you're at, the terminology here is going to be different. So we just call it an advanced healthcare directive. That's what people in financial planning circles call it. But sometimes it's a healthcare power of attorney. It's a healthcare proxy. Different states have different names. Different places have different names. Different countries have different names. But you want to have an advanced directive that tells the doctor, if you're unable to speak, this person speaks on my behalf. By the way, it used to be, and in some places, you can still say what you want to have happen if you're in a coma or if you're in a car wreck and you can't speak. You could put down things at a time. You know what they found out? In most places, they've gotten rid of that because what you think ahead of time versus what you think at the moment are sometimes two different things, two completely different things. And too many people that came out of those conditions and were able to speak later said, nope, my brain was completely different. So states, countries, areas got a little smart to that. And in a lot of cases, they said, no, instead of putting down your directive ahead of time, tell somebody generally what you want to have happen and have that person be on your team. And specifically, you probably want to be somebody that knows about healthcare. On the other side, there's the same person who works with your bank. This person is called a power of attorney. A lot of the time, it's a spring up power of attorney, meaning I don't want to give somebody access to my accounts today. I want that to only become available if for some reason I'm deemed by a court that I can't act on my own behalf. So somebody can petition the court to say, hey, Joe can't do things on his own behalf. Some people might say that's now, but we'll get past that. Somebody had to petition the court to say, Joe's not in his right mind. I need to be his power of attorney. So in this case, it's a contingent power of attorney. Somebody who, if you can't do it, then they step in. Do not make somebody your power of attorney today without thinking it over first. If you've ever read any Shakespeare and you know the story of King Lear, you know that doesn't end well. And if you don't know the story of King Lear, go read it. It's worth your time. Get a little bit of culture in your life and read King Lear, because giving your stuff away to your kids or whoever ahead of time, not a great idea. But let's go into this idea, not just with singles, but with everyone. I think what this piece says is even bigger than what it ostensibly says, which is that singles have this problem and they need to deal with this stuff. I think it's because a lot of married people take their support system for granted, right? Because if they have kids or they have or they have a spouse, they take it for granted that I have support. But do you really? I know a lot of people that supposedly have support from their spouses, from their children, and they don't. And they never really thought about it. So I think being intentional is what this piece is all about. Whether you're single or you're married, being intentional about your support system and what will I do if something happens, like thinking through that. Obviously, it's imperative for single people without children to do that. What is my support system? And to create one, and realizing that you might have to pay people where a married person doesn't. But even if a married person doesn't have to pay people, it still is about this whole planning process of planning. So I think thinking through what our support system is, whether you're single or married, is the big takeaway from this second piece. And it's something that should really scare everybody, right? Something bad happens to me. Where do I go for support? And huge issue. Hey, we're about to get to the big idea segment that we finish off every podcast episode with. But before we do that, want to talk one more time about our friends over at FamZoo. FamZoo is the place to teach your kids about money, especially on a holiday when the kids are bored silly and they've run out of things to do this summer, because FamZoo will teach kids about credit and about plastic. You know, kids don't see you take money out of your wallet as often as my parents took money out of their wallet. They see you take a piece of plastic and put it in a little machine and it makes that awful buzzing sound, and you take it out and bam, you've got groceries. How does that all work? Teach kids before they leave home how that works so that they don't have problems later like I did. I went to college, applied for a credit card, and bam, bad things happen because we never talked about it. StackyBenjamins.com/FamZoo. You'll not only find out more about how awesome that system is to teach your kids about money, they also have a great support group. They have a great close Facebook group where Bill, the head zookeeper, and his whole team help people put in place, and people that use FamZoo help each other create better systems to teach your kids about money. A great way to spend your summer. StackyBenjamins.com/FamZoo. All right. Our friend Lori's here. Hey, Lori, we were talking about every day before we go live, we talk about the mug. And today I'm drinking from my Citadel mug. So, and Lori sent this to me. So thank you very much. Lori says, King Lear plug, culture. Clearly you've been hanging out with Doug. Yeah, clearly not, Lori, right? So what's the big idea here today? idea number one from Investment News, Vanguard going to 1,800 different funds, 1,800 different exchange traded funds. And the lesson there is that it's easier than ever to diversify. And then our second piece, planning for aging singles, I think it's wider than that. I think single or married doesn't matter. Thinking about your support system. Clearly, if you're single, you have to think about your support system. But I think that a lot of married people think that there's a support system there that's not as tight as they wish it was, right? Should be tighter. Should think about it more deliberately. That's our takeaway from the second one. But if I put these two pieces together, I think our big idea I'm going to send everybody home with is this. I think this idea of a cost benefit analysis, when I helped my daughter get her support system, this idea of this hum that I opened the show with today, this thing, I thought it was a fantastic support system, but she didn't use it. And I'm paying a fair amount for it. And so the cost benefit analysis on hum for us, well, in my brain, it represents a great value. It clearly doesn't represent a great value for her. Having a cost benefit thought about the things in your life make a lot of sense. And as we're moving the basement from Texarkana in the next 6 months to Detroit, I have to think about cost benefit. What's the cost of carrying this thing across the country versus the benefit of keeping it? We've donated books. We've donated bedding. We've donated so much stuff because the cost benefit analysis doesn't make sense. And yet I've stored it for all this time. And it's in times like a move that I think cost benefit analysis. And clearly with Vanguard moving to 1,800 funds, that says to us, there's a big benefit to exchange traded funds, and the cost that you pay for active management, not much worth it. And a lot of us know that, but now you can put it into play even more than ever before. And the cost to diversify, even easier than before. And on the other side, the cost benefit analysis of the support system in your life, whether you're single or married, like if you have to hire people to help you, what's the cost benefit going to be there? But this idea of consciously walking through cost benefit of everything, especially today, fantastic idea. Hey, thanks everybody in Facebook land for hanging out with us today. Our live studio Facebook audience, thanks for being there. Thanks to you at home, wherever you are, for listening to Money in the Morning. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy. Go Stack some Benjamins. Bye-bye.
Money in the Morning is created by Joe Saul-Sehy and is brought to our channels by our producer and engineer, Richie Rutter-Rees. Stacking Benjamins and Money in the Morning are for entertainment purposes. Before making moves, consult with your financial advisor. Looking for training sessions? Kathleen Selimans has a great suite of Stacking Benjamins tools, so head on over to learn.stackingbenjamins.com. Hoping to chat with us on the web? Say hello to Shannon Cowan, our social media guru and community manager in our Facebook group. She can be found at stackingbenjamins.com/basement. From the basement, I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. See you tomorrow.
All right. Hey, Jordan. I'm thinking you're talking about the American bond prime cap. What's funny is that so there still is a case for managers doing their thing. And there are some managers out there who do a great job. It is, I mentioned earlier, I think that if managers didn't have their hands tied so much, I think you'd see managers do much better. The problem is they're going to wiggle a lot more. If you leave a manager on his own and don't tie their performance to these indexes as closely, and there weren't the threat of lawsuits all the time, if somebody does that, you'd see them wiggle a lot more. You see that with hedge funds, right? That's why a lot of the best money managers have moved to hedge funds because A, they make more money, but B, they're not tied to all of these regulations that mutual funds have. So that's why the hedge fund industry came about mostly for the wealthy class, and then for the rest of us out there, exchange traded funds came around. And so we saw kind of the market really split there. And they have hedge funds for the masses, but nothing that's exciting. And hedge funds also open up a whole different realm that others don't. But that had nothing to do with your question. Your question was specifically about Prime. PrimeCap's a fine fund. American is a company that charges some decent fees, but at the same time, over long periods of time, has done very, very well. So American funds have really taken care of their customer. And you can talk all day long about fees, and American funds, not the cheapest thing on earth, not super expensive, but not the cheapest thing on earth. And their customers have been rewarded by sticking with them. So American funds are a fine choice by me. And PrimeCap is, if we're talking about the same thing, is certainly great at what they do. So good stuff, guys. All right. Hope everybody has a great holiday tomorrow. We will be here doing a show tomorrow for the next day. Because I wanted to do one to get further ahead yesterday, and we didn't get that done. So since I'm around, I'm going to take a break from packing boxes to hang out here. So if you're hanging out, please hang out with us. All right. Thanks for hanging out. See you later.